Amazon Games' MMO New World launches on August 31st and promises to be an exciting PvP-focused MMO with interesting combat, meaningful alliances, and an exciting world to explore and conquer. And conquer really is the word for it, with bonuses being given to the faction that managed to be the most successful in any particular world or area. Players have every reason to try to win over the other side, not just for fun, but also for material benefit. Conflict drives the endgame of New World. With that in mind, here's what you should need to know about factions and about companies in New World. As always, thanks for watching, and please like and subscribe if you enjoy the video, and come find me at twitch.tv/HawkmoonHero, where I plan to stream the game when it launches. But with that in mind, let's hop straight in. New World has 3 factions, who the developers describe as organizations of like-minded players and non-player characters, with their own motives and schemes for the island's future. Your faction choice will determine who you fight with and against in PvP, and can confer benefits if your faction or company controls settlements and territories. The 3 factions are as follows. The Marauders. Living examples of the credo, might makes right, the Marauders are a ruthless military force bent on establishing a free nation where anyone with the strength and determination to stake a claim can do so. They're very much the traditional military, forceful faction in New World. The Syndicate. Working in the shadows and dealing with secrets, members of the Syndicate use their boundless guile and intellect in pursuit of forbidden knowledge. Kind of a roguish, intellectual class. And finally, the Covenant. Divine champions who are driven by conviction and their faith in the light of the spark, the Covenant fights with righteousness and justice for the struggling souls of all living things. A kind of religious, spiritual class for players to choose, if that's the faction they're interested in. The developers have actually put out a fun quiz that you can take to determine which faction you should choose. I'm going to link that in the description. I think it's a really fun way for the game to flesh out its lore a little bit more with these kind of 3 interesting alliances. In terms of what difference this is going to make though, choosing your faction will affect the kinds of players you'll be playing with and the objectives you have, and will have a big effect on your experience when you're playing New World. Faction vendors will be a source of equipment, missions, and objectives, and will also drive the game's economy by being your means of communicating with like-minded players and building alliances and companies. PvE missions for your faction will grant faction currency that you can use to buy equipment, while PvP missions take this a step further. According to the developers, PvP missions ask you to do things like recover tactical information, deliver critical messages or items to another territory, or patrol an area for opposing factions. Accepting one of these missions, however, will auto-flag you for World PvP. If you unflag yourself, that's automatically going to abandon the mission. If you die during your PvP mission, for example by being killed by a member of another faction, you will fail it and you'll have to go back and accept another. In addition to rewarding faction currency, completing PvP missions will also generate influence for your faction within that territory, which either reinforces your faction's control of a territory if it's the dominant one, or makes the dominant faction that's not yours more vulnerable to a declaration of war. More on wars in a bit, but first let's talk about companies. Companies are player-run organizations in New Worlds that players can join once they reach level 10. They're kind of like the guilds or clans of New World when you look at them compared to those kinds of systems in games like World of Warcraft, Destiny, or Elder Scrolls Online. Each company is affiliated with one of the 3 factions, meaning that they come under the banner of one of the factions. Companies can have up to 100 members, which is different from the previously announced 50. And one really interesting part of New World's design is that the game's settlements are controlled and managed by individual companies, having been taken for the first time or captured through a faction war. The governor is the person who creates a company. When a company takes control of a territory, the governor also becomes the governor of the controlled territory. They can start town projects that result in settlement upgrades, must pay dues to the faction your company is a part of, and therefore need to adjust taxes and fees in their settlement so that travelers and residents help to pay the upkeep while they craft, trade, and live in their houses. They can also make the settlement more desirable to own a home in by focusing on particular upgrades for particular types of players. Governors can also have consuls who are second in command with all the same permissions as them. I think this is a really interesting system that Amazon Games have put into place. It does put a lot of power in the hands of players, and particularly in the form of governors in the hands of like one particular player. But I think the ongoing series of faction wars will essentially prevent bad governors from lasting too long. I'm really excited to see how this pans out though, and I think this is going to make for some very interesting faction and guild politics in a way that we won't see in other MMOs at the moment. Now though, let's talk about faction wars, what Amazon Games describe as the pinnacle of PvP in New World. Amazon Games describe it as epic siege warfare at a massive scale, with 50-player teams of attackers and defenders fighting for control and victory. The outcome of a war determines which company controls contested territory or settlements, which makes it a fight for Aeternum's future and for the bonuses and benefits of controlling a territory in the game. Those who control towns control resources and can confer benefits to their fellow faction and company members. If the company currently controlling a settlement successfully fends off the invaders, they retain control of the settlement. If the attackers are successful, however, they take over, specifically the vanguard in that war. While you're not able to declare war on members or settlements run by your own faction, Amazon Games point out that you also don't have to rush to the defense if you don't like how they're running a particular settlement, leading to interesting possibilities of infighting within factions that I think will be really fun to see play out. Regardless of size, any guild or company within a faction will have the chance to be the vanguard in a war, and therefore to become governors of the settlement should the war be successful. Vanguards are thus responsible for building a winning coalition that have a chance of taking down the other side in a war, made up of other members of their faction, both inside and outside their company. In terms of how the war actually works though, 50 players from each side take part in a scheduled PvP event seeking to win control of the fortress and its surrounding area. Players get to use siege weapons and spend battle tokens for repair kits, ammo, and elixirs within that space. Attackers have to claim the capture point at the heart of the defender's fortress within 30 minutes to win. In order to do this, they first have to claim 3 capture points along the way. Those become spawn points when captured, and once all 3 are destroyed, the wall around the enemy fortress becomes vulnerable to attack. They can use battle tokens to build siege turrets, and can destroy defenders' turrets along the way to make the offensive easier and to really push forward. Defenders, on the other hand, need to fend off the attackers for 30 minutes to win. They want to defend these capture points to prevent them from becoming enemy spawn points, and also because once all 3 are captured, the fortress's walls become vulnerable to attack. They can use battle tokens to repair the turrets and walls. Turrets can't be rebuilt, but the walls can. Over time, faction wars will allow New World's players to determine the geography, economy, and fate of Aeternum through their own actions. This is a really fascinating system that allows for player actions to be meaningful in a way that is rarely seen in games in general, especially in the MMO genre. I'm super excited to see how this plays out. Amazon Games have predicted the possibility that one faction may eventually fall into a last place of sorts, something that they want to avoid feeling like a total defeat. They've said they're being careful about tuning the benefits of being in a faction that controls the majority of territories, while paying extra attention to making the factions that control fewer territories feel more like underdogs rather than losers. So no matter who's winning in the moment, they've built the system in such a way that makes strong comebacks possible and an exhilarating part of the game, so to speak, from them. New World's faction and company system is looking like an incredibly interesting and consequential part of the game, and I'm really excited to dive in and see it in action. Thanks very much for watching this video. I'm Hawkmoon Hero. Please like and subscribe. I'll be covering New World more, and peace out. Have a good one.